It is the middle of June. The first real heat wave of summer has arrived. The weather forecast says 97 degrees. The heat index says it feels like 104. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun has been sitting directly over your house for hours. The living room feels sticky. The upstairs bedroom feels unbearable. And the air conditioner has been running nearly non-stop since breakfast. You glance at the thermostat. Then you glance at last month's electric bill sitting on the kitchen counter. And you already know what's coming. Another month of paying hundreds of dollars just to stay comfortable. Now imagine something different. Imagine taking 2 empty plastic bottles from your recycling bin, filling them with water, freezing them overnight, attaching them to a fan you already own, and creating a stream of cool air that makes one room feel dramatically more comfortable during the hottest hours of the day. No contractor, no installation, no expensive equipment, no monthly payment. Just 2 bottles, a fan, and a cooling principle that has existed for centuries. I want to be completely honest with you before we go further. This is not magic. It will not replace a central air conditioning system. It will not cool an entire 2-story home. It will not turn a 100-degree attic into a refrigerator. But that is not what it is designed to do. What it does do is surprisingly simple. It helps cool a specific area, a bedroom, a home office, a living room, a workshop, a place where people actually spend time. And for many American families facing rising energy costs, that can make a meaningful difference. Today I'm going to show you exactly how this works, the science behind it, the common mistakes people make, the setup that provides the strongest cooling effect, the salt trick that extends cooling time, and the honest limitations nobody talks about. By the end of this video, you'll know whether this simple homemade cooling system is worth trying in your own home. But first, let's talk about why most people are looking for alternatives in the first place. Because summer cooling has become expensive, very expensive. A generation ago, many families could run their air conditioning without thinking twice. Today, things are different. Electricity costs have increased in many areas. Utility companies continue raising rates. And every summer seems to bring another record-breaking heat wave. Many homeowners have noticed the same pattern. The thermostat stays set at the same temperature. The house feels the same. But somehow, the monthly bill keeps getting higher. That frustration is what sends people searching for alternatives. Not because they want luxury, but because they want relief. And that's where this simple fan and ice bottle method enters the picture. Because it uses something most people already have: cold water, frozen ice, and airflow. Now, let's talk about something that surprises many people. Most fans do not actually cool the air. They simply move it. If a room is 90 degrees, the fan is moving 90-degree air. The reason it feels cooler is because moving air helps sweat evaporate from your skin. Your body loses heat faster. That's why standing in front of a fan feels refreshing. But the actual temperature of the room often changes very little. The frozen bottle method is different, because now the fan is moving air across a cold surface. As warm room air passes over the frozen bottles, heat transfers into the ice. The air leaving the bottles is cooler than the air entering them. That cooler air then spreads throughout the room. The process is simple. No electronics, no complicated machinery, just basic heat transfer. The same principle used in every air conditioning system ever built. The only difference is scale. A central air conditioner uses compressors, refrigerant, coils, condensers, motors, and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. The fan and bottle setup uses frozen water. Different equipment, same physics. And physics doesn't care how much money you spend. Now here's where things become interesting. Because many people try this method once and decide it doesn't work. Usually for one reason. They set it up incorrectly. There are 3 common mistakes. The first mistake is using bottles that are too small. Many people grab the smallest water bottles they can find, the kind that disappear after a single lunch break. The problem is simple. Small bottles contain very little ice, which means they contain very little cooling capacity. The ice melts quickly, the cooling disappears, and people assume the method failed. In reality, the setup was simply undersized. The second mistake is poor placement. People often place bottles directly in front of the fan. This blocks airflow. The fan struggles. Air movement decreases, and cooling performance suffers. The third mistake is unrealistic expectations. People expect a $20 fan and 2 frozen bottles to compete with a $5,000 HVAC system. That isn't realistic. But that's also not the goal. The goal is targeted cooling, and targeted cooling is where this method shines. Now let's discuss the one trick most people have never heard about, the salt trick. Because this single adjustment can dramatically improve performance. Most people freeze plain water, and plain water certainly works. But adding salt changes the chemistry. When salt dissolves in water, the freezing point drops. This phenomenon is called freezing point depression. You've seen it before. Road crews spread salt on icy roads every winter. The same science applies here. For every large bottle, add about 1/4 cup of table salt. Shake until completely dissolved. Then freeze overnight. The resulting ice often stays colder longer. As it melts, the salty solution remains cooler than plain water. The practical result is straightforward. Longer cooling, more stable airflow, more comfortable afternoons, especially during the hottest days of June and July. Now, before I show you exactly how to build this setup, let's take a moment to understand something important. Cooling a room isn't always about lowering temperature. Sometimes it's about lowering perceived temperature. And there's a huge difference. Imagine 2 rooms. Both are 82 degrees. One room has stagnant air. The other has cool, moving airflow crossing your skin. Which room feels better? Most people would choose the second room immediately. That's why this setup often feels more effective than the thermometer alone suggests. Because comfort is not just temperature. Comfort is airflow, humidity, heat transfer, and how your body experiences the environment around you. That's exactly why this simple setup has remained popular among off-grid families, campers, homesteaders, and budget-conscious homeowners for decades. Not because it's perfect, because it's practical. And practical solutions tend to survive. Now that we understand the science behind the cooling effect, let's walk through the actual setup. Because this is where most people either succeed or fail. The good news is that building this system requires almost no technical skill, no special tools, no electrical knowledge, and no expensive equipment. In fact, there's a good chance everything you need is already somewhere in your house. Let's start with the materials. You need one fan. Almost any fan will work. A table fan, a standing oscillating fan, even some box fans can be adapted. Larger fans generally provide stronger airflow, but smaller fans work perfectly well for bedrooms and personal spaces. Next, you'll need 2 plastic bottles. 1-liter bottles work well. 2-liter bottles work even better. The larger the bottle, the longer the cooling lasts. You'll also need water, a small amount of table salt, a few zip ties, and a towel. That's it. The total cost for many households is $0. Now let's prepare the bottles correctly. Fill each bottle about 90% full. Never fill them completely. Water expands as it freezes. A completely full bottle can split or leak. Leave about an inch of empty space at the top. Then add approximately 1/4 cup of table salt. Tighten the cap. Shake the bottle thoroughly. You want the salt fully dissolved, no crystals sitting at the bottom. Once both bottles are prepared, place them in the freezer overnight. 12 hours is usually enough. 18 hours is even better. By the next day, you'll have 2 large blocks of ice ready for use. Now let's prepare the fan. Before touching anything, unplug it. Always. It only takes a second. Most fans have a protective grill on the back. Look carefully at the rear housing. This is where the bottles will be attached. The goal is simple. We want incoming air to pass across the frozen bottles before it reaches the fan blades. That allows heat to transfer into the ice. The fan then pushes cooler air into the room. Using zip ties, secure the bottles firmly to the rear grill. 1 bottle on each side usually works best. Try to keep them balanced. Make sure they do not touch moving parts. Make sure they cannot slide. And make sure the fan can still oscillate normally, if it has that feature. Take your time here. 5 minutes of careful setup can save you hours of frustration later. Once the bottles are attached, place a towel underneath the fan. This step matters more than most people realize. Warm air contains moisture. When that moisture contacts a cold bottle, condensation forms. Just like a cold drink sweating on a hot day. Over several hours, that water can accumulate. A simple towel prevents slippery floors and water damage. Now comes the easiest step. Turn the fan on. At first, the difference may seem subtle, but within a few minutes you should notice something. The airflow feels different, cooler, more refreshing, less like hot summer air being pushed around the room, and more like a gentle stream of cooled air moving across your skin. That sensation is exactly what we're trying to create. Now let's talk about placement, because placement can dramatically affect performance. Imagine trying to cool a room while sunlight pours through uncovered windows. The room continuously absorbs heat. You're fighting an uphill battle. Instead, close blinds, close curtains. Block direct sunlight whenever possible. Every degree of heat prevented from entering the room makes cooling easier. Think of cooling like filling a bucket. If the bucket has a hole in the bottom, you'll struggle to keep it full. Direct sunlight is that hole. Close it first. Then add cooling. The best rooms for this setup are smaller spaces. Bedrooms, home offices, reading rooms, craft rooms, workshops, guest rooms. These spaces respond quickly because the cooled air remains concentrated. Large, open floor plans are more challenging. The air spreads too quickly. The cooling effect becomes diluted. That doesn't mean it won't work. It simply means expectations should remain realistic. Now let's discuss another strategy that dramatically improves results. Use the setup during the hottest hours of the day. Many people make the mistake of waiting until a room becomes unbearable. Instead, start cooling early. If the forecast predicts a hot afternoon, begin cooling before the heat fully builds. It's easier to maintain comfort than it is to recover from extreme heat. Professional HVAC systems operate on the same principle. Prevent overheating rather than chasing it. Now let's compare this setup to traditional air conditioning, because this is where people often become curious. A window air conditioner may cost several $100s. A central air conditioning system can cost thousands. Then come installation fees, maintenance costs, repairs, monthly electricity bills. The expenses continue year after year. By comparison, this setup requires almost nothing. The fan likely already exists. The bottles are recycled. The water costs pennies. The salt costs pennies. The only ongoing expense is freezing the bottles. For many households, that's almost negligible, especially compared to running an air conditioner all afternoon. Now, I want to be careful here. This isn't an argument against air conditioning. Air conditioning is incredibly effective. On extremely hot days, it can be essential. But many families don't need maximum cooling in every room all day long. Sometimes they simply need one comfortable space. One room where they can read, work, relax, watch television, or sleep comfortably. That's where this method can provide real value. Now let's talk about bottle rotation, because this is where many experienced users take the system to the next level. Instead of freezing only 2 bottles, freeze 4, or 6, or 8. Use one pair while another pair freezes. When the first set melts, swap them. This creates nearly continuous cooling throughout the day, especially useful during prolonged heat waves. Many off-grid families use this strategy, not because they're avoiding technology, but because they're maximizing efficiency. And efficiency matters. Now let's address humidity, because humidity changes the experience significantly. In dry climates, the cooling effect often feels stronger. The air feels crisp. Comfort improves quickly. In humid regions, results vary. The airflow still becomes cooler, but the surrounding moisture makes heat feel more intense. The system still helps, but expectations should remain realistic. Now, imagine a typical American summer afternoon. It's 3 p.m. Outside temperatures are approaching their peak. The driveway is hot enough to shimmer. The roof has been absorbing sunlight for hours. The walls of the house are radiating stored heat. This is when many air conditioners struggle hardest. This is also when a targeted cooling system becomes most valuable. Because you don't necessarily need to cool every square foot of the house. You only need comfort where people actually are. And that idea alone can save significant money over time. Now here's something interesting. Many modern cooling products promise extraordinary results. Advertisements show futuristic gadgets, portable coolers, smart devices, subscription services, expensive accessories. Yet often the most effective solutions rely on very simple principles. Cold objects absorb heat. Air carries temperature. Shade blocks solar gain. These principles have worked for generations. They worked before smartphones, before smart thermostats, before Wi-Fi, and they'll continue working long after the latest gadget disappears from store shelves. That's one reason simple methods continue to survive, because reality tends to outlast marketing. Now let's discuss safety one final time. Never use glass bottles. Never place water near exposed electrical connections. Always inspect zip ties regularly. Replace cracked bottles immediately. Keep the fan stable, and always unplug the unit before making adjustments. Simple precautions keep simple projects safe. Now I want you to think about tomorrow. The forecast says another hot day is coming. The afternoon temperature climbs toward the upper 90s. The house begins warming. Most people will simply accept discomfort or crank the air conditioner lower. But you have another option. Save 2 bottles tonight. Fill them with water. Add salt. Place them in the freezer. Tomorrow afternoon, attach them to a fan. Measure the room temperature before and after. See what happens. Not what advertisements claim, not what internet comments argue. What actually happens in your home. Because real-world results matter more than opinions. And you may discover that a solution costing almost nothing provides exactly the comfort you've been looking for. When you try it, come back and share your experience. Tell us which room you cooled. Tell us how long the bottles lasted. Tell us whether you used 1-liter or 2-liter bottles. Tell us your outside temperature. And if your grandparents or parents had their own summer cooling tricks, share those too. Some of the best household knowledge isn't found in manuals. It's passed down through families. One generation helping the next stay comfortable without spending more money than necessary. And sometimes that knowledge is surprisingly simple. A fan, 2 bottles, a little salt, a few minutes of preparation, and a cooler room during the hottest days of summer. That's all it takes. And sometimes, that's more than enough.